Welcome to Mets Hot Stove with your hosts, Rob and CP, the go-to podcast for all your New York Mets news and rumors.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Hot Stove, episode 2 of the off season, and we do got some news to talk about in regards to more coaches being hired for the New York Mets, and it is an interesting hire nonetheless, and you do wonder what is the overall outcome or plan when it comes to coaches under Carlos Mendoza, who clearly doesn't have a decision or an opinion when it comes to who is being brought in as his coaching staff when David Stern is basically making these moves, it seems like, on his own. Welcome to the channel, guys. Welcome to Hot Stove. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. It's been a little bit of another hiatus after the first episode of Mets Hot Stove. Again, not a ton of news to talk about. Obviously, the World Series is going on right now. It's going to be game 6 of the World Series going back to Toronto. So, again, offseason technically really hasn't gotten started yet when it comes to free agency, trades, etc., all that fun stuff. We got key offseason dates on the bottom that we'll run through in just a little bit. But the most important thing here is knowing that Carlos Mendoza is clearly on the hot seat when it comes to the 2026 season. That puts a ton of pressure on Carlos Mendoza. And again, that's fine. I'm not mad about that at all. I don't think he deserves, a clean slate. One really good year, one bad year. I'm not gonna say his third year should be, let's see what happens approach and give him the entire season. I would rather have some type of consistency when it comes to managers. I just don't understand every 2 to 3 years, let's fire another manager, which the Mets have been doing at will for the last couple of times. I'm sick and tired of it, to be honest, guys. I really am. And to not have Carlos Mendoza, once again, not have chosen his bench, his coaches that he will be in the dugout with, is a problem within itself. That's not even talking about the roster yet, the roster construction, the roster chemistry, what the lineups are going to look like, the rotation, bullpen. We're talking about the coaches right now. And that is my biggest problem already with David Stearns this offseason, is that you hire a bench coach in Kai Correa that is clearly a guy that David Stearns really likes, a guy that David Stearns feels like he can take over as interim manager if Carlos Mendoza gets fired midway through the season or whenever amount of games through the season. That is where he pinpoints Kai Correa as a guy that could step in. He did it very, not long, but with the Giants for a little bit. I just don't understand the fact that you're basically leaving your manager there out to dry. Like, how can you be Carlos Mendoza? Like, just think of a regular job that we all have. And your company that you work for hires a guy that is clearly a guy that could take your position. But you have to train him. You have to be there next to him, having conversations, having, planned outcomes for games. And obviously he is the guy that's going to take the scorecard or the lineup card if you get thrown out of a game. This is a guy that's looking to take your job. Make no mistake about it. Kai Correa is looking for a managerial job at some point. And him being a young guy who is now the bench coach for the New York Mets, and now you're Carlos Mendoza having to communicate and, basically, spill your mind, your thoughts, your opinions, your strategy with a guy who probably could take your job if you don't do well. I don't think it's a great sign at all. I truly don't think that. I just don't understand. How can you leave a manager out to dry that much and expect him to do a good job? Like, I'm expecting Carlos Mendoza to have a rough go of it. And that's unfortunate for us fans because we have to deal with more losing. But how can I expect Mendoza to make the right decisions? Try to be perfect. Because in 2024, it seemed like every move he made, every decision he made worked. And every decision he made last year didn't work. And I don't feel like, it feels like he's, out in the wilderness alone. And that's why I feel like he is. Again, you got Jeff Albert, the hitting director. You got Troy Snitker, who the Mets just hired as the actual hitting coach. Like, I'm not saying that, Troy Snitker is a guy that, is going to, go under, go behind Mendoza's back. But let's be honest. Snitker is a Stearns guy. Correa is a Stearns guy. This pitching coach, whoever it might be, is going to be a Stearns guy. So why wouldn't Kai Correa, why wouldn't Snitker, or why wouldn't the pitching coach, who David Stearns clearly likes and is going to hire, or already hired, and if they don't like what Mendoza is doing, why wouldn't they just go over Mendoza's head and tell Stearns? If Kai Correa believes that decision or this plan or this strategy he doesn't like, that Mendoza is putting in place, and the results aren't happening for the New York Mets, why would Kai Correa have a conversation with Mendoza in his office? Why not he just go to Stearns? Because let's be honest, if you're Kai Correa, would you go to Mendoza? No, you'll go to Stearns. So you're already going over the manager's head and speaking to a higher up. And I just think it's stupid. I think it's absolutely stupid to leave your manager out to dry. Basically, Stearns is saying that I'm looking to get rid of Carlos Mendoza. I truly believe that. Like, I just don't understand the fact that you're leaving Mendoza so much out to dry that you're expecting him to get fired, or you're expecting to fire him. I don't like that at all. I understand bringing him in as a rookie manager and, get experience of guys around him, which they did. Obviously, Gibbons I thought was a really good decision based on a rookie manager having a ton of experience as a manager behind Carlos Mendoza. Like, I completely get that. But have a guy that is, that's been a bench coach, that's been, that's basically been Carlos Mendoza on multiple teams, and bringing him there. Obviously, he's looking for a managerial job. And obviously, Kai Correa knows that there's a very good opportunity for him if Mendoza gets fired. He would be thrown into that spot. Like, I don't see Carlos Mendoza come from the executive office and they're going to say, all right, Carlos, now you're the manager if Carlos Mendoza gets fired. I don't see that. I don't see him throwing him from the office to the clubhouse, to the dugout. It just doesn't make sense. That's why you should have just made Carlos Beltran the bench coach. But the problem that I think with David Stearns is that he wants power over every one of these coaches. And does anybody believe that Carlos Beltran is going to be a guy who is going to listen to David Stearns, who is a nerd, who is an analytical guy, who is a guy who's a front office type of guy? Or is Carlos Mendoza going to do his own thing because he was a great player? He is a guy that can connect with the players. No, you can't have that camaraderie. You can't have that, that player manager who was a player, a really good player that can relate to the players, because that can undermine David Stearns. So why do I think Kai Correa, Jeff Albert, and Troy Snitker are all here? Because David Stearns can control them. And I truly believe that David Stearns feels like Carlos Mendoza is making decisions different than what the plans might be when they decide a strategy before a game. And I don't think David Stearns appreciates that. And if that's a good or bad thing, like, does anybody, like, what if Carlos Mendoza was doing the exact opposite Stearns planned strategically during, before a game, but it worked in 2024? What if Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns sat down after the 2024 season and said, David Stearns, listen, we got to go with this plan. If we sit down and we have a plan, implement it in the game. And what if Carlos Mendoza, who's trying to keep his job, says, okay, I'll do that for this season, meaning 2025. So what if Mendoza went more by the plan of what David Stearns and himself put together prior to a game, and it didn't work out so well? Not only that David Stearns had a horrible year acquisition-wise, from free agency to trades, from offseason to trade deadline, it was bad. Absolutely bad. So having Mendoza have nobody he can trust in that dugout is problem number one. We haven't even got to the roster yet, which is even more frustrating if you're a Mets fan. I know this is October 30th. It is, many months away before spring training, before our roster's set. And is it more overreacting? Sure. Possibly. But you can also look outside the lines a little bit and realize what David Stearns is doing here. And I don't like the fact that David Stearns, who I think he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room and does not care about any other type of way of doing things except his own philosophy, which, let's be honest, 2024 was a lot of luck. I think we can all agree it was a lot of luck there. We needed a song to get people together. Like, it wasn't a great team. Like, we had better pitching, but let's not, we had a down year from Nimmo, a down year from Alonso, a great year from Lindor. We didn't have Soto. So it wasn't so much as a crazy year. I mean, we were terrible in the first 2 months of the season. We had to fight back all the way up until game 162 just to make the playoffs. Everybody act like, we won 95 games and we easily got into the playoffs in 2024. It wasn't the case. We all know that. And yeah, we did go on a run in the postseason, but we all know that season was supposed to be a transition year. And this is the problem with the New York Mets and its franchise, especially over the last 20 years or so. When they're not expected to win and there's no expectations, they'll have a surprise season. And it's like, whoa, it's great. It's all fun, good vibes, all that fun stuff. But they're good vibes and it's fun because you're not expecting it. But a year like last year, when everybody picked the Mets to make the playoffs, they did it with high expectations, winning 83 games. This is the problem with this franchise, especially the guys of this core, which I still think needs to get broken up. And I know that pisses off a lot of Mets fans. I don't think the Mets should bring back Pete Alonso. I think I'm sick and tired of bringing back guys who are, notorious losers. They are. Sorry. Pete Alonso is part of this losing culture. Brandon Nimmo is part of this losing culture. How is George Springer doing? Go back a couple of years ago when Brandon Nimmo and George Springer were free agents. I did not want to sign Brandon Nimmo. I wanted George Springer. You should have gave him the extra year and you would have signed George Springer and Nimmo would have went elsewhere. But no, you gave the extra year to Nimmo and not wanting to give it to George Springer. How is George Springer doing in the playoffs? Right? That guy is more clutch than anybody. That's how good he is. And I'm not saying that George Springer would have made a difference of, this past season or a couple of years ago or even more important in 2024. But you know what? What is Brandon Nimmo? He's a broken down, has-been center fielder that has no arm and barely can play left field. And you got him for what, 5-6 more years? This is the problem we fall into continuously with this organization. There's got to be a change. There's got to be a core change here. And unfortunately, Pete Alonso did not sign that 7-year deal a couple of years ago when the Mets tried to extend him. That is not on the Mets. That is on Pete Alonso. Now the Mets have to bend over backwards to give him a 7-year deal that he's trying to look for, I would not give him more than a 5-year deal. And I don't think he's going to take that. So, too bad. Find another way to make this team better. I think you have to break up this core. And that means Jeff McNeil going away. Brendan Nimmo would be nice to get rid of, but not only does he have a full no trade clause, and even if he says, yes, I am willing to be traded, how much money do you have to eat just to get a bag of balls back from another team? So you're stuck with Nimmo, in my opinion, unless miraculously they find a way to get rid of him, which I don't think is going to happen. Lindor is a staple. Juan Soto is a staple. There's got to be changes here. We know there's going to be changes with the bullpen because everybody and their mother is a free agent. That's a problem within itself. And signing too many one-year deal guys and trading for all rentals at the deadline means that you got to put a whole new bullpen together again. So that means Carlos Mendoza can look at his roster and says, I don't have a bullpen. Pretty good chance that Edwin Diaz is going to opt out. So by the time the World Series, a few days after the World Series is over, Mendoza has no bullpen. So this is another situation where David Stearns leaves his manager out to dry. He not only continued to option guys out of the bullpen all season, so Mendoza basically didn't know half of these guys that were in his bullpen every day. And it became a problem. How do you trust guys that you have no idea how they're going to perform or that you even know? I don't even think Mendoza met guys that were in his bullpen half the time because there were so many options every day. So, in my opinion, there needs to be a roster shakeup. Too many Met fans fall for this emotional nonsense over Pete Alonso and others, not just Pete Alonso. Like, I would love to get rid of the entire core. I would love to get rid of Nimmo. I believe the Mets are going to get rid of Jeff McNeil. I would not re-sign Pete Alonso. I would do a whole new revamp of a core revolving around Lindor and Soto. You know why? Because those guys are winners. Those guys are clutch. We've watched them be clutch. Right? Lindor carried his team in 2024 offensively. Juan Soto had a really good year. Clutch numbers should be better, but overall, we know he's a winner. We know you get those guys into the playoffs, they will perform because they've done it before. So there's a time and place to realize what has been to the problem. I'm not saying Pete Alonso can't be productive, can't be a good part of this team. But since 2019, there's been a lot of losing, and Pete Alonso has been the face of this. Right? You can't say that Pete Alonso's the face of the franchise for all these years, but when things go bad, somebody else is the face of the franchise. Stop giving him credit, but not also giving him the blame. This is the problem with too many Met fans, and I see it again every time a story comes out about Pete Alonso. Like, we got to stop. Take the emotion out of it and realize this core has been a losing core. How many more years do we have to choke down a stretch and act like it's only because, oh, well, the pitching was bad. Oh, this was bad. You know what? That's when a guy like Pete Alonso, a guy like Brandon Nimmo, who's been a staple of this franchise prior to the pandemic, that need to take the bull by the horns, take this team, put it on their back, and do it. Why is it okay for teams that basically have no pitching, that don't have great pitching, yet, like the Dodgers, they have great starters, but they have a terrible bullpen? You don't think how many times the top players in their offense step up when they need to? This is the problem. Like, there needs to be a big shakeup here. And the one thing that I will agree with David Stearns, because I'm telling you this right now, if Pete Alonso is a long-term Met and they re-sign him, it's not going to be because of David Stearns. It's going it's going to be because Steve Cohen stepped in once again, because Steve Cohen is emotionally fixated on what the Mets fan wants. And if there's enough fuss, which there will be, because Met fans, I truly believe, would rather have players that they're emotionally connected to than getting players that actually are winners and are better and can put a lineup together or a roster together that fits better and win, but they'd rather be emotionally connected with a guy like Pete Alonso, who is historically been a part and been a face of many choke jobs and many losing seasons. He's not the issue only. But stop giving him all this credit. But when things go bad, oh, it's Soto's fault. Oh, it's Lindor's fault. Oh, let's blame Marte. Let's blame this guy. Let's blame a young 23-year-old top prospect. No. The guys who got the big contracts, the guy who everybody says is the face of the franchise until, oh, wait, things going wrong? No, Pete Alonso's not the face of the franchise. He's not a leader all of a sudden. Pete Alonso is the face of the franchise, right? Everybody acted like this home run record is so beautiful and so much fun, which it should be an embarrassment to have that amount of home runs, and that is a record for a franchise. Sorry. That just means your organization and your franchise wasn't that good in history. And I think we all can understand that that's true. You have 2 world championships, and you've been in existence since 1962. Sorry. It doesn't excite me. Too many people were worrying about that when the Mets were falling apart at the seams. But hey, Pete Alonso's home run record, it's the emotional connection to these players that people get fixated on rather than actually winning. If that comes with the winning, with the emotional connection, great. Everybody's happy. And Henry Delvat, I agree with you. I don't think Pete Alonso is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because you know what? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. steps up. And look, Pete Alonso had a terrible season in 2024, but he stepped up in the playoffs. I gave him credit for that. But let's not act like Met fans finally turned on him at the end of the season when he had a bad season. If it wasn't for that home run, half of the Met fans would have won him back, probably more. But it took a good run in the postseason to change everybody's mind. Pete Alonso, and we only talk about his bat, like that's the only thing that matters. Again, look at the defensive stats for Pete Alonso in September. It was one of the worst defensive stats by a first baseman. He was terrible in September defensively. He had a bad defensive year. And you could talk about picking balls all you want, but you know what? When you can't throw to a base, when you can't flip a ball to first base when the guy's right next to you, that's a problem. This is why I rather have the offense come from somewhere else and give me a solid to great defensive first baseman. That's the problem. And I really think this is the issue. And Game War, yeah, sure. Vlad is younger and has a bigger belly than Pete. Okay, but you know what I see? I see a guy that brought his team to the World Series. And make no mistake about it. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. signs a big contract, a huge contract to stay with his team, right? That's an extension that they came up with right when the season started. Right? I don't see Pete Alonso signing that extension that the Mets tried to give him a couple of years ago, which would have made him a career Met. He didn't want to do that. That's on Pete Alonso. That's on Pete Alonso. There's a reason why Vlad Jr. gets MVP votes. There's a reason why other first basemen are considered better overall. And this is why when you talk about MVP candidates, Pete Alonso was never a part of that because, as I said many, many, many times, now this year in 2025 was a pretty good exception, right? what I wanted to see from Pete Alonso coming into the 2025 season was a better average, which he clearly did. And I wanted him to drive the ball to the opposite field. I wanted him to focus on that right center field gap. He did all that. So I give him credit for that. He had a really good season. But if you break down the months, there's a couple of months out of the year where Pete Alonso was absolutely ice cold, which again, there's cold streaks, understandable. But stop giving him credit when he's having a red hot month, and then when things go bad, it's blaming everybody else, but not Pete Alonso. This is the problem. And Met fans are emotionally fixated and connected to certain players, which I'm okay. It's fine being that type of person and that type of fan. But you also have to realize that that emotional connection leaves you in a situation where you'd rather have Pete Alonso and lose than not have Pete Alonso and possibly win. And I'm not saying if Pete Alonso goes elsewhere and the Mets put a roster together that might fit better, and this is the whole point. I said it for years. Go back to when my channel first started 4.5 years ago. I continue to say I don't trust this core. I'm not sure if this core fits well. I'm not sure if this is a winning core. I don't think they fit well together. And that's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world. Shit happens. But you can't continue to give these guys contracts. You did it with Nimmo. You had an owner step in to re-sign Pete Alonso. And if you try to keep this core together and let's just get rid of Jeff McNeil and think it's going to change, you're mistaken. You are. Now, I think that a lot had to do with the pitching that sucked this year, which I said from day one as I was in Houston in my hotel room with pregame number 1 of the season that me and Chris did. I said it. I don't trust this rotation. Even when they were the best ERA in baseball through the first month and a half of the season, I did not trust it. There was a glaring hole in this rotation, which was lack of innings that ultimately destroyed 2 bullpens in 1 year. There was a first half bullpen that got a tremendous amount of guys hurt and made them get overused. And then there was a second half bullpen, most of the guys you traded for, that you had to overuse because your starters couldn't go deep. And it was just a big clusterfuck of things that went wrong for the New York Mets. So, key off-season dates when it comes to free agency, when it comes to salary arbitration, qualifying offers, all that fun stuff. So, free agency begins 5 days after the World Series ends. Obviously, I don't think much is going to happen right away, obviously. But qualifying offers 5 days after teams can offer the qualifying offer to players that are eligible to be given a qualifying offer, which Pete Alonso was not that one because the Mets did it last year. And so he has no compensation pick attached to him this year, which I think is going to help Pete Alonso in the market a little bit. The trades can start happening 1 day after the World Series ends. I don't think nothing crazy is going to happen right away. Salary arbitration is mid-January. Player club mutual investment options are 5 days after the World Series. The player decision on the qualifying offer that teams could offer them, they got until November 18th, so it's about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks from now. At 4 p.m. So they got to accept that offer or decline it on November 18th by 4 p.m. The winter meetings is December 8th to the 11th. It's in Orlando, Florida. And the Rule 5 draft is right in smack dead in the middle of the winter meetings on December 10th. So those are all the key dates that you need to worry about if you're a fan of baseball. If you're a Mets fan, with qualifying offers, player option, club options, which obviously the Mets have Pete Alonso have a player option. Edwin Diaz have a player option. That's the two big ones in this organization that we all believe that both of them are going to opt out. We know Pete Alonso's opting out. Still up in the air if Diaz is going to opt out. Again, we all love for Diaz not to opt out, but he'd be stupid not to. He's going to make more money, even if it's not with the New York Mets. So we'll see where that goes. I truly believe the New York Mets really got to figure out the pitching. And we'll get to that later in the show. But overall, what David Stearns is doing with the coach staff, and this is by no means saying that Kai Correa is going to be a bad bench coach or Jeff Albert's going to be a bad hitting director and Troy Snitker is going to be a bad hitting coach. Not saying that at all. What I'm saying is Stearns is making this decision based on his wants and needs and likes with no conversations or no opinions of Carlos Mendoza. These are not Carlos Mendoza guys. Just like when Carlos Mendoza got hired, David Stearns hired his staff to be under Carlos Mendoza. I don't like that. I don't like a manager not having control over the guys that he has under him. Because you always have that feeling that these guys are trying to undermine him, especially the bench coach. And again, I'm not saying Kai Correa is a bad guy or anything like that, but come on, guys. If you get hired as a bench coach and you're looking for a managerial job, why would Kai Correa accept the Mets job as a bench coach, as a similar job that he's had with other teams? Because he knows Mendoza's on the short, on the chopping block. He's on the hot seat. That's the only reason why he took this job. So that's the issue at the moment. So yeah, easy. I understand. True, I understand that. But when you know your manager is on the hot seat, and right, David Stearns chose Carlos Mendoza. If you chose Carlos Mendoza, trust him. Doesn't it seem like David Stearns doesn't trust Carlos Mendoza anymore? Like, that's your hire. If you don't trust him anymore, that's on you. That's on nobody else. It's just stupid. I really think it is. And Game More, I don't know if you heard, but you probably don't listen. I already said that Pete Alonso had a really good year. And what I wanted to see for him this year was a better average. I don't care about the home runs. I don't need him to hit 45 home runs. 38 is fine for me. But he got his average up. His clutch numbers were damn good. And I wanted to see him hit the ball more in the right center field gap. That's where he's at his best, when he's driving that ball to right center. He did that this year. But people love to just talk about the bad and act like he had a good season defensively, because he didn't. Like, that's a part of it. David Stearns didn't bring up run prevention, and don't think that wasn't part of Pete Alonso not having a good defensive year. And that goes for Lindor too, by the way. Lindor wasn't very good this year. But you know what? Pete Alonso was healthy. Lindor had a broken toe, and now he found out that he had elbow surgery, which was cleaning up his elbow. So he had issues too. Again, Lindor played, so it's not an excuse. He didn't have a great defensive year. But your infield was kind of bad defensively. It really was. So, again, when it comes to the new hitting coach, Troy Snitker, obviously he was with the Astros for a good amount of years as assistant hitting coach and hitting coach. He is the son of Brian Snitker, the former Braves manager. I don't get excited or disappointed by a hitting coach. I just don't think it's that important. Jeff Albert is the hitting director who's been in this organization. I kind of like that, because his philosophy in the minors, that clearly isn't working for prospects, because half of them don't hit when they get to the majors. But whatever. I do like guys coming up from the organization that started low in the organization and worked his way up. I like that. But they didn't make Jeff Albert the hitting coach. They made him the director of hitting. which is above Troy Snitker, which is, again, to me, stupid. Do they have the same philosophy? Wasn't that the problem with Barnes and Chavez? That they had different philosophies that they tried to work together with, but clearly it was two different minds and too much information coming to these hitters. It just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Jeff Albert's going to be in the dugout as the hitting director with Troy Snitker, who is the hitting coach. Like, come on. Like, why are we overthinking this? And again, I don't think that hitting coaches are going to make Pete Alonso be better. I don't think it's going to make Lindor better or worse, or Juan Soto better or worse. But why have more information in the dugout when these guys already have too much information? I just, it's getting to the point where David Stearns is just getting all analytical guys, and I'm going to be sick and tired of matchups and, let's bring in this, this guy's hot, but analytics don't care about guys being hot. It's, he can't hit lefties, but he's one of the hottest hitters in the Mets lineup, so we got to sit him. But there's two lefties on the mound in a row, so we're going to sit him, even though he's hot, for a right-handed batter who's batting 120. I always think that's stupid. And that worries me because it's just stupid. Yeah, Henry, that's fine. But we saw the problem with multiple hitting coaches or multiple people that are hitting, a guy above a hitting coach. But this guy's also going to be in the dugout. And I know other teams do it. But you know when analytics works? Analytics works when you have a great team, when you have great players. Right? A guy who is a journeyman, analytics ain't going to make him a better hitter. They're just not. I don't care if you have the best hitting coach in the world. They're not making a back end roster guy great and be a starter. Guys are going to be great because they're talented. I think we overlook that too much. Yeah, easy. I understand all teams are analytical. Understandable. But you know what? Teams that win and teams that are really good and have a good roster construction, analytics ain't going to change that. I'm sorry. Did analytics make Jose Iglesias be one of our most important players in 2024? No. It was just a good vibe and he hit. That's it. And he was good defensively. I just think we're overlooking this analytical nonsense. Like, the reason why the Mets won in 2024 was analytics. So why did they suck last year when analytics was supposed to fix these pitchers? Maybe because the pitchers they got actually suck, and that pitching lab is a fucking joke. It is. I'm sorry. Luis Severino was a guy who actually was good, and we all knew had great stuff. It was the injuries that stopped him. Go figure. He was healthy last year in 2024. He had a really good season for the Mets. We all know that when he signed with Sacramento or the A's, that he had terrible home numbers, which that ballpark in Sacramento is terrible for pitchers. The ball flies out of there. But on the road, he had a really good season. So I'm not going by his home numbers because that ball flies out of there. And the road numbers were great. So Severino was healthy. So I expect him to be good. Sean Manaea changes his mechanics around because he saw Chris Sale pitching for the Braves when he was in the dugout, when the Mets were facing him. That has nothing to do with analytics. That has something to do with a player saying, I think I could do that. And it was successful. But all it did was when you did something your whole career one way, and yes, you tweak your mechanics every now and then, but he drastically changed from an over-the-top pitcher to basically a side armor or three-quarters that takes a tremendous amount of toll on your body. And if you go back to the offseason last year, I said I didn't want Sean Manaea. One, because I don't think he's a very good pitcher. I think that's a lot what I think we overlooked how good he was. He was really good last year, but to expect that outcome and say he's your ace is idiotic. But to expect him not to have some type of injury based on changing his entire mechanics around and throwing completely different, your body needs to adjust to that. He's not a 22-year-old who's trying to figure out what he's doing with his life and what type of mechanics he's going to use to, make the majors and work it through the minors. This was an in-season move. And his body didn't adjust clearly last year when he got hurt. And I'm not saying that, that was the main reason, but I brought that up in the offseason. You guys who follow the channel, who are mainstays in this channel, known that I said that. And I was very adamant about that. And of course, I wish he would have stayed healthy. It might have helped the Mets win. But even when he came back healthy, he was terrible. Because when a guy has a 4 career ERA, that's what you're probably going to get. And that year that he had in 2024 was an anomaly. That's it. He reverted back to what type of pitcher he is, which is an okay pitcher. I don't think Sean Manaea is a number 1. I don't think he's a number 2. I think he's a number 3 at best, and that's a stretch. How many more number 3s and 4s are we going to have? That was the problem this year. We had too many 3s and 4s, but no 1 and 2s. And the idiotic nonsense that Met fans and the front office continue to say that, we got Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga as our, co-aces. Kodai Senga is never trustworthy. Sean Manaea did it for a half a season. And we're making these guys out to be the top of the rotation guys. It's idiotic. It's stupid. And this leads us to other issues that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But again, when it comes to Troy Snitker, I have no thought of he's going to be good or bad. I don't know. If the Mets hit, everybody's going to give him credit. If they don't hit, everybody's going to blame him because you need scapegoats. And Met fans couldn't wait to get rid of all these guys because the Mets weren't hitting. Yet in 2024, the last time I checked, Eric Chavez was the hitting coach, but he never got credit that year. In 2025, he gets all the blame. Same thing goes for Jeremy Barnes. Same thing goes for Jeremy Hefner, blah, 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 and all that stuff. Right? When the pitcher was good, Hefner gets no credit in 2024. Pitching sucks, it's Hefner's fault. It's stupid. It really is. So I have no really opinion, good or bad. It is what it is. He's a guy that David Stern's hired. That's it. When it comes to the one coach that actually showed something and was a good result was Antoan Richardson. A guy who clearly got these Mets players, some of them who were not even fast, turned them into base stealers. He was so good figuring out pitchers prior to games that he got these runners and these players on the Mets to pinpoint certain things pitchers do and when to go on certain pitchers. And the Mets had a great year with stolen bases. And I'm not blaming anybody here. I'm not blaming the Mets, and I'm not blaming Antoan Richardson. If you're Antoan Richardson and you got all this praise throughout the year, wouldn't you want a better job? Why wouldn't you give him the bench coach job? He clearly benefited. He made this team benefit in a way that the Mets weren't really good at because they weren't a very speed type of team. Yet they stole a ton of bases with guys who really never stole bases. And Dola, they could overpay him, right? It's not part of the luxury tax or the payroll. But I think Antoan Richardson got pissed off that he wasn't considered for any of these better jobs in the organization. Stearns would rather go outside the organization for guys that who knows what they are, but you have a guy internally who did a great job this year and you're not going to give him a better position? Because I don't think it's about the money. I think they want to keep him as the first base coach. Maybe pay him a little bit more for, a great job you did. But this is the problem. Like, guys who do good in this organization, wouldn't you want to promote these guys? Wouldn't you want to keep these guys in your organization that did a good job? Now this guy is going to go elsewhere. And I'm not saying he's going to go elsewhere and be great somewhere else and be another first base coach, which I find it hard to believe he's going to be a first base coach. But let's be honest, guys. If he goes somewhere else as a first base coach, that's even a worse look from David Stearns. Like, if the guy's making $100,000 in 2025, you can't give him 150. Don't you think he deserves that raise for the only coach that actually did something with this team this year? I just think it's stupid. Why lose guys that have been valuable to your organization? Now, if Richardson gets a bench coach job or gets a higher position in another organization, I will still question, why wouldn't David Stearns promote him internally? Why not? What is wrong with somebody doing a good job and you promote them? It's stupid. So you bring in guys outside the organization that you have no clue. At least you know what Antoan Richardson could be in a higher position. You know he's a good first base coach. You know what he did on the base paths for this team with these players. It's just stupid. Now we're going to have another first base coach. We got to hire a third base coach. It's like, come on. So I just don't get it. If this was a Richardson decision where he did not want to be the first base coach, which I'm not mad at him. I'm sorry. I did a hell of a job this year. I got praise for it from the SNY crew. The fans continue to talk about Antoan Richardson. Nobody really cares. Nobody talks about first base coaches and third base coaches like we talked about Antoan Richardson. That was a staple last year. Everybody talked about it. The broadcast talked about it over and over again. Yet, if you're Antoan Richardson and you know that fans were praising you, the SNY booth was praising you. Clearly, you did a good job based on results. And the team doesn't want to give you a higher position. That obviously there was a ton of higher positions available in the dugout. And you basically stepped over him to get a couple of guys that, okay, they might be good, but we don't know that. But now you're going to lose a guy who is actually successful for your team, result-wise, and in the organization, and now you're going to lose him. It's stupid. Find a higher position to give him, to praise him for what he did. It just doesn't make sense. Again, I don't know what David Stearns is doing here. He's undermining his coach, his manager, by bringing guys that he wants and basically on the verge of replacing Carlos Mendoza, because I think that's what David Stearns wants to do. Because David Stearns is going to find a way to not take the blame or not get blamed once again if the Mets don't do well, and now the scapegoat will be Carlos Mendoza. And then David Stearns will actually get a chance to hire another manager. So he failed with Carlos Mendoza, if that's the case, if it doesn't work out next year. But gets the opportunity to hire another fraud of a manager, because we all know it's going to be a similar guy to Carlos Mendoza that is a guy who's probably a first-time manager, because I find it very hard to believe that David Stearns is going to hire a guy that actually has a mouthpiece. Somebody like Carlos Beltran. I don't think that's happening. I'd be shocked. I'd like it, but I'd be shocked. Carlos Beltran doesn't seem like the guy that's going to listen to David Stearns. I don't think a veteran manager is going to be hired by David Stearns. Because why would David Stearns do that? He likes control. Completely. Clearly. So, new hitting coach, don't really care much about. I don't really have a strong opinion, except I don't think it's going to make or break this team. Richardson, you could have found a higher position from somewhere in this organization. There's no need to lose him because of whatever reason for David Stearns. I think Antoan Richardson was pissed off and saying, I did a hell of a job this year and you're not going to promote me to another higher position? Well, screw you. Yeah, you might give me a little bit of a raise, but why give me the same position? So I might as well get paid a little bit more and get a higher position. I don't blame him. I don't. Now, again, we talked about Lindor quickly, but when it comes to Francisco Lindor, he had debridement surgery, which basically is cleaning out his elbow. So not only did he have the broken toe early in the season, he had clearly he had, I guess, maybe loose bodies in his elbow, something going on with that elbow that they had to clean out. He is projected to be ready for spring training, so that's a good sign. So nobody really knew that his throwing elbow was somewhat of an issue. And again, this guy played basically all season. So we'll see. I'm trying to look at the comments. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to catch up to the comments. It keeps on blacking out on me, and then I find them again. So I do apologize for that. And Dolo, I agree with that about use you with the cheap salary, but once your value goes up, he lets you go. Yeah. I mean, haven't we seen that with players and now coaches? So, yeah. Well, Joseph, he kind of is getting, Stern's getting pretty good at making bad moves. Like I said, I think this is the biggest offseason for David Stearns, right? I understand the first year it was kind of like he acquired a team, right? There was a lot of guys. He acquired this roster. Last year, there was a lot of moves that he brought to this roster that were terrible. So it's a season where a team that he didn't put together, for the most part, I mean, he brought in Minai, he brought in Severino, so he gets credit for that. But for the most part, lineup-wise, he didn't put together. And mostly bullpen, he didn't put together. So I'm not giving him credit for year one, and I'm not giving him blame for year one when they went to shit in the playoffs. This year, his hands were all over this team. So he's going to get blamed for this. This year, this is all his team. That's it. This is your team now. You're going to put in a whole new bullpen together. You're going to put a different rotation together. And you're going to have a couple of guys in the lineup that might be changing. So this is David Stern's team. This is year 3. This is his baby now. So all that works, we'll give him credit. All that doesn't work, he's going to get the blame. Unfortunately, even if the Mets have a terrible season, David Stern's not getting fired. He's going to get an opportunity to hire a new manager. He's going to get an opportunity to have a whole new offseason. But this is a big offseason for David Stearns. Big offseason for David Stearns. Make no mistake about it. He needs to get an ace. Don't tell me about Nolan McLean. How many starts did he make? 10, 8, 9? I am not going based on 10 starts and saying McLean is going to be our ace. That is fool's gold. That is a bad job if you think Nolan McLean is just going to be thrown in as an ace. I think he's going to be a very good pitcher. I think he has potential of being an ace. But you can't tell me he's an ace based on 10 starts. Why not bring a guy who is established, who is an ace, along with Nolan McLean? Wouldn't that help you with the rest of your rotation? When you know you got an ace and McLean who has that high potential, where now you can really work with your 3, 4, 5 starters. You can make Clay Holmes your number 3 or maybe your number 4. I don't mind you messing around with, reclamation projects as your number 4 or 5. That's what they're there for. You still got David Peterson. You still got Clay Holmes. I don't mind you going with those guys as your 3 or 4. I think you need to trade Kodai Senga. I don't think you can trust him. He quit on this team. This is a situation where the Mets need to get an ace. I don't care if it's a trade. I don't care if it's a sign-in. I don't care. We know there's guys out there in the trade market. We know there's guys out there in the free agent market. Get somebody who is better than everybody you have. That is an ace. Even if it's a guy that you don't think deserves that type of money or deserves that type of trade and prospects, they're better than what the Mets have currently. Right now, you can give me any name that's on the trade market, any name that's on the free agent market that is the top ace, top level pitcher that is on the market. Right now, he's better than Nolan McLean. Until Nolan McLean establishes himself more and gets better and looks to be a proven talent at the top of the rotation, they're better than him right now. Yeah, Dola, but the free agent market doesn't suck. I'm talking about Framber Valdez. I'm talking about Dylan Cease. Don't tell me for 1 second that they're not better than Nolan McLean. If you get one of those guys, which again, I'm not a big fan of either of those guys, but they're better than what we have. That is the idea. You need to bring in somebody better than what you have. If you bring in somebody better than what you currently have in your rotation, that guy is considered your best pitcher. It's very simple. It's not that hard to understand. This is the stupidity when it comes to looking at guys that, again, we're going to have our favorites, right? I told you who I wanted at the trade deadline. I wanted to get guys that were actually good. I wanted to get guys that are actually good. I just, oh man, it's so annoying that people will still look at, well, I don't like Framber Valdez. Okay, you don't have to like him, but he's better than what you have. That means he's your best pitcher. That means he'll be your ace. Dylan Cease is better than what you have. Wouldn't it be nice to pair Dylan Cease with Nolan McLean or pair Framber Valdez with Nolan McLean? Yeah. Obviously. It's better than Minaya and McLean. It's better than Sanger and McLean. It's better than Holmes and McLean. It's better than Peterson and McLean. Why not? Why not? You've seen promise from Brandon Sproat. Again, it depends on if the Mets trade for a starting pitcher, which I think is more likely than spending money on Framber Valdez and Dylan Cease, who are both over 30. I don't think Stearns is going to go that route, but I won't be mad with either one. Mike, I'm fine with that. You want to go get Freddie Peralta, which, you know what, would be the lower end of the spectrum for me? He's better than everybody else we have. I'm fine with that. I am. Stop going for the has-beens and guys who are not that good and telling me, because you think you're smarter than everybody else, that this guy is our ace. When I knew, and more Met fans should know, Shomanai wasn't that guy. Kodai Senga isn't that guy. He's not trustworthy enough. He needs 6 days off before he can pitch. He needs to have everything go right. If there's a little bit of a minor issue with him, he don't pitch. And that's before he even gets on the mound and pitches good or bad. I don't trust that guy. Well, get you exactly, right? I hope Nolan McLean becomes a top 2 starter or even an ace. But why do we have to wait for that? Why can't you put him as your number 2? Bring in a guy who is better than him. Because again, proving guys who are better pitchers right now is okay to bring in. Why not have that 1-2 where you don't have to worry about Russian Tong again and let him develop in the minors? Maybe Brandon Sproat can be your number 5 starter if you don't trade him in a package for something. You can make Brandon Sproat your number 5. Listen, let's just add a craziness here. Game over, I agree with you. Like, I didn't like what Valdez did last year, right? But he still is a damn good pitcher, better than what the Mets have. But let's just say the Mets signed Framber Valdez, right? It's not going to, some Mets fans might be happy with that. Some won't be. But he's better than every Mets pitcher we have.
Let's say it's Framber Valdez, McLean. Let's say it's Clay Holmes, David Peterson, and Brandon Sproat as your rotation. You know what that does? That puts no pressure on Brandon Sproat as our fifth starter. If he has a high upside, great. We know what Clay Holmes is. I think he's going to be a decent pitcher. But as your number 3, I expect him to have a worse year than he did this year. He had a really good year this year considering what, his first year as a starter since Pittsburgh and transitioning from bullpen to starter. I expect him to have closer to, a higher, I would say like maybe a low to mid 3.2, 3.4, 3.5 ERA, which is okay. David Peterson in a contract year, I think he's going to have a good season. I think that this year in 2025, I think because he pitched so many innings in 2024 coming off of that hip surgery, I think he ran out of gas. So I think David Peterson's going to have a good season. I think it's going to be probably high 3s, maybe even close to 4, maybe around 4. And then your number 5 is always a crapshoot. If Brandon Sproat is better than expected, great. But he's your number 5 starter. If your number 1 and number 2 are doing their jobs more often than not, you're not going to cry about your 5th starter every 5th day because your 5th starter is going to be a hit or miss. And Brandon Sproat, as a young starter, could have a lot of a lot of big potential. But you can't count on him to be a fucking ace or be a number 2. It's stupid. So anybody, Sandy Alcantara, Joe Ryan, Freddie Peralta, Tariq Skubal, Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, the top 7 guys that potentially could be, obviously, Framber Valdez and Dylan Cease are free agents, but those other guys that are possible trade targets, possibly could be moved, are all better. And yeah, Dolo, Sproat can be a Steven Matz 2.0, but you know what? As him being a 5th starter, we can see how he developed. If he becomes a Steven Matz, okay, but he's your 5th starter. Maybe if Jonah Tong is developing better with that 3rd pitch and showing some promise in the minors, you flip him. This is why a guy like Nolan McLean, I understand why the Mets were very hesitant to trade him because they seen his demeanor. They seen his potential. But when you don't make a trade deadline acquisition for a starting pitcher, when your starting rotation was an absolute disaster, you can't just count on these kids and expect them to work out right away and be saviors. So at the end of the day, no priority should be more of a bigger priority than getting an ace. And this is why David Stearns, as soon as this offseason kicks off, you need to be working the phones for a trade or signing one of these top starters as quickly as possible. You can't have this linger. You got to get a top starter in here as soon as possible. Because here's another thing. When you try to do this as early as possible, let's say it's a trade, you know what you're already giving up prospect-wise. So if you do this early enough, now you see your roster, all right, you got your ace, great. Now, the prospects you have left, you can determine, all right, are these guys going to help my major league roster? Or are they going to be assets in other trades? If Brandon Sproat is part of a deal to bring in Sandy Alcantara, fine. Now you know, okay, maybe I have to go out and get a veteran guy that can give me innings, who can be our 5th starter behind Clay Holmes and David Peterson. This is why it's so important to make this decision quick. Now, you can't force teams to trade players early, but that doesn't mean you have to wait until January to make a trade for a top ace because Framber Valdez and Dylan Cease might be off the market, and then you're really in trouble. This is where you have to pay attention, and where David Stearns, you'll know his priorities right away. If his priority is not getting an ace, and he's worrying about Pete Alonso, he's worrying about Edwin Diaz right off the bat. Now, I think you can worry about Edwin Diaz right away. I think the Mets are going to probably do what they did a couple of years ago before even Diaz became an official unrestricted free agent, the Mets came up with a long-term deal with him. I think that's going to happen once again. But let's just say you do this early and you make a trade or you sign one of these top-level pitchers. Now you have a whole offseason to not really worry about the rotation. Yeah, you might bring in a veteran guy that's kind of a journeyman type of guy, not a great pitcher, but a guy can give you innings, and he'll be a fifth starter. Oh, great. Because I do feel like whoever you trade for, Brandon Sproat's probably going to be a part of that. I truly believe that no team's not going to ask for Brandon Sproat. And no, there should be never a no. The only guy that's untouchable is Nolan McLean. I know some people say, oh, what about Carson Bench? I don't care. He's not proven yet. I'm not worried about that. We got to worry about getting guys in here that can actually help this rotation right away. And yeah, it might hurt. And if there's Met fans that are complaining about a package to bring in a top-line starter, then I really got to question, do you really want to win? Or are you in this emotional connection phase again? Stop falling for that nonsense. Prospects or suspects. That's it. I don't care if Carson Bench becomes a great player for the Miami Marlins. I don't care if Carson Bench goes to Minnesota because the Mets trade for Joe Ryan. What is that doing? Nothing. Is this guy going to help this New York Mets team? That's all I care about. The outrageous nonsense that people talked about with Drew Gilbert was just idiotic. Tyler Rogers wasn't great. He was pretty decent, but wasn't great. But we acted like Drew Gilbert was the end-all be-all and was like, he would have made the difference for the New York Mets, which wouldn't have been the case. He didn't play center field anymore. The Mets were down on him. He was a right fielder, and last time I checked, we had Juan Soto. So priority number one needs to be a top-line starter. That needs to be figured out rather quickly. I'm not saying, on November 15th, sign an ace or trade for an ace. But it needs to happen before the winter meetings. So you got basically a month and a half to get an ace in here. Don't wait until let the winter meetings be the time where you can, get maybe a back-end rotation type of guy. Maybe make a signing like Cody Bellinger or maybe a Josh Naylor. Maybe a Kyle Schwarber. I want the winter meetings to focus on the lineup and bullpen and the rest of the offseason to really focus in on that. We can't have this shit linger where the Mets are making bullshit signings and bullshit trades that are not really overly helping this team, and we still don't have an ace. We really don't have a first baseman. We don't have a center fielder. I'm not sure about third baseman. And by the way, guys, I think Alex Bregman should be on the New York Mets. I think you should put Brett Baty at second base. Go sign Alex Bregman. And if you want a stopgap or you want a solid defender who can show a little bit of promise with the bat, go get Josh Naylor. You get that righty in Alex Bregman. Josh Naylor is a guy who hits for average. He'll hit you about 20 bombs, maybe 25, and go out there and get a center fielder. If that's a guy like trading for Luis Robert, if that's going for Jarren Duran in Boston, go do it. Stop playing games here. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. There shouldn't be any skepticism or indecisiveness for David Stearns. Nolan McLean is your only untouchable. If any trade doesn't go down because you're not willing to give up any other prospect, David Stearns should be fired. This is getting ridiculous now. You don't have much room for a lot of these prospects. Right? I understand people are talking about Jet Williams and Carson Bench. Make a decision. If you want one of these guys to be your center fielder, make that decision early. Don't wait. Listen, in my opinion, if Jet Williams is highly regarded from another team more than Carson Bench, great. Put Jet Williams in the deal. If Jet Williams and Carson Bench are both center fielders, but you're going to try to keep one and get rid of another in a trade package, fine. You keep one of them, great. If you believe that Carson Bench is the guy you want to be at center field, I'm fine with that. But you know what? You better get a big-time DH in here. You better bring a really good first baseman in here, and you better have your ace. It's got to be decided. You can't be indecisive on prospects. We gave up, 11 prospects at the trade deadline last year? Some of them they were okay. They weren't great. Drew Gilbert was one of the higher ones up, but nothing special. He could be good, but at the moment, many guys passed Drew Gilbert on the depth chart. Ryan Clifford, Jet Williams, Carson Bench, guys like that. They can't be indecisiveness. There needs to be, put up a whiteboard. List them. You got 2 center fielders in your farm system in Carson Bench and Jet Williams. You still got Ronnie Mauricio here. You still got Brett Beatty here. You still got You got Mark Vientos here. You got Luis Acuna. All these guys can't be a part of this team this year. You got to make a decision on these guys. You can't have these guys back on the roster. The roster construction was terrible. Completely terrible. Most of these guys sat on the bench because you couldn't play them because you were playing the other guys. Too many guys played the same position on this roster. Stupid. Tyrone Taylor needs to be a 4th outfielder. He needs to be available off the bench for a defensive replacement for left, center, or right field. If your worst defender is Brandon Nimmo or Juan Soto, whichever one you determine, then those guys need to be out of the game for defensive purposes for Tyrone Taylor, if you have the lead. It's just that simple. Now, I'd rather take Nimmo out of the game because his arm is terrible, and I'd rather have Tyrone Taylor in left field. Or if Carson Bench can move to left field, Tyrone Taylor center field, whatever. But Tyrone Taylor needs to be your 4th outfielder. Tyrone Taylor should not be starting for this team. Tyrone Taylor is more valuable off the bench for pinch run situations, maybe even a pinch hit situation, but definitely a defensive replacement late in games when you have a lead. This is the issue. You need to determine if one of your top prospects are going to be your center fielder. Because I'm okay. I never said I don't want to play prospects. But when you have these guys undecided, you're not trading them, but you're also not giving them the opportunity, then what are you doing with them? They're in no man's land. They're not helping your team regardless. Make the decision. If Carson Bench is going to be your center fielder, do it. You can't wait until spring training and don't have a legit center fielder in here and tell me Jet Williams and Carson Bench are going to fight for center field. That's a dangerous game to play because they both can suck in spring training, but one's going to be a little bit better than the other, and you can say, oh, he deserves the job. That's not going to cut it. Not for a team that's going to have high expectations. You can't have too many question marks once again going into 2026. You can't do that. So this is where you need to see, all right, now, Vientos, Beatty, Mauricio, and Acuna. I think the one guy that probably has the best opportunity to be on this roster next year is Brett Beatty. Make a decision. Is he going to be your second baseman or your third baseman? He deserves the opportunity because he had a really good season. Make that decision early. Because if he's going to be a second baseman, now you can determine what you're going to do with third base. I don't want Vientos at third base. He sucks defensively. I don't trust him with the bat. Luis Acuna, I don't think he's a very good player. I think he's a fast runner and he has a good glove. That's it. That is it. Maybe he can develop into a good hitter, but with his speed, he shouldn't be swinging for the fences. He should be around the 10 to 12 home run guy. He needs to have a 270, 280 average. With that speed, that average needs to be way up. But until he becomes an average hitter, His speed is useless unless he's coming off the bench. I don't want to waste a top prospect as a pinch runner or a bench player. I'd rather use him as an asset in a trade. Now, Ronnie Mauricio is going to be very interesting. We know the talent he has, but he can't hit a breaking ball. We know he can hit a fastball, but he can't hit a breaking ball. Sometimes he has mental lapse defensively where I don't trust him at third base either. So honestly, I think he should be a big trade asset. I think the Mets need to bring in a third baseman. Now, if you're going to go the center field route and you're going to go with a prospect in Jet Williams or Carson Bench, that's a cheap route. I'm okay with that. But you better be in one of the corner infielders, third or first. It needs to be Okamoto, that Japanese player who is really good defensively, and I think he can be a good hitter. He's shown to be a good hitter in Japan. He's not going to hit 40 home runs, but he'll probably hit you 25. He'll probably bat around 260, 270, but he's a great defender at first base. You either bring that guy in, because Murakami is more of a DH. He's terrible defensively. So I'm not bringing him in and spending all that money for a DH, a guy coming from Japan. I'm not doing that. I'd rather just sign Kyle Schwarber and be a DH. Okamoto is more of a guy that is a great defender who has about 20 to 25 home run power, can bat you 260, 270, and he'll be a solid ball player. Seem like the Mets don't have. They have a really good ball player or a bad ball player. It's never in between. If you bring in Okamoto, bring in Alex Bregman. And I think you can use Vientos as a guy if you want to be, that platoon type of guy, or maybe a DH if you don't get a guy like Kyle Schwarber and you want Vientos just to be an everyday DH. I'm okay with that. At least you got a position for him. But when it comes to Mauricio, when it comes to Acuna, I don't want those guys as bench players. Give me veterans. I want journeymen that are bench players. Give me platoon guys who are veterans as bench guys. Those guys work out better. These young kids hardly work out as bench players. I think we've seen that. Mauricio was terrible. Vientos was terrible. Acuna was terrible coming off the bench. They weren't good coming off the bench in big spots offensively. You got to make a decision on these guys. You got to start trading these guys. Make a decision. The indecision of David Stearns, I think, royally screwed this team in 2025, especially at the trade deadline. I said it right when I was doing those trade deadline shows. Out of the four guys, Beatty, Acuna, Mauricio, and Vientos, two of those guys needed to be traded. You couldn't have all four of these guys on the roster after the trade deadline. What happened? They all were on the roster. It ultimately screwed any potential you had in these guys because you were sitting two of them at almost every moment, and it was dumb. So when it comes to my offseason acquisition outlook, this is what I would do. For first base, I know everybody's like, oh, you're not going to say Pete Alonso. You're right, I'm not. Because I think you can use the money elsewhere to better your team. People are always focused on how are you going to replace that production solely from Pete Alonso. I don't look at it like that. I look at it as I can expand this roster. I can expand this lineup a little bit. Give me two guys that can hit 25 home runs that play center field and first base. That's 50 home runs. That extends your lineup. That stretches out your lineup more. Give me two guys that bat 255, 260 with 20 to 25 home runs. That's between 40 and 50 home runs. That is, you're replacing that production. Those guys are going to have around 75 to 85 RBIs. That replaces one guy of Pete Alonso's production. So now not only do you have two players that can hit you between 20 and 25 home runs that can bat you 260, 250, 260 and give you between 75 and 85 RBIs, that's 40 to 50 home runs, 100 to 100, 120 to 130 RBIs just by having 70 RBIs or 80 RBIs. You stretch out your lineup. You have multiple good players in multiple positions. You kill two birds with one stone when it comes to positions. And that can go from first base, center field, third base. Doesn't matter the combination. What I would do, I would either go after. I like Josh Naylor. I wanted him at the trade deadline, and I would have DH Pete Alonso and put him at first base. I would have done that, but David Stearns is scared shitless to make a trade like that. I like Josh Naylor a lot. I'm not saying he's a great player by any means, but he's way better defensively than Pete Alonso. He's smooth defensively at first base. Just look what he did with Seattle. He was really good. He's a really good defender. I think he could be a 20 to 25 home run guy. He is a big average guy. He can hit between 270 and 300. That is the guy I want. I want a guy to put the bat on the ball. He's a good defender, a really good average hitter, can hit you 20 bombs, perfectly fine. That would be fine for first base. Now, when it comes to center field or third base, depending on what the Mets do, this is why they probably need to figure out the ace, because if you're going to trade for an ace, you got to know what you have left. And if it's a couple of major league prospects that you had on this team this year, plus minor league prospects to bring in a top line starter, once you bring in that top line starter, you see what you have left. If a guy like Carson Bench is still here and you really want to give him the opportunity to be a center fielder, fine. You better bring a prominent third baseman in here. And if that's a guy like Alex Bregman, you do it. You do it 100%. Depending on who's left from that trade that's still on this roster or still in this farm in this organization, do you want Vientos, if he's still here, to be your everyday DH? I would be okay with trying that out. No problem. Give me one guy that is the everyday DH. If you're not going to go after a third baseman and you think Ronnie Mauricio is the guy and you're going to keep Brett Beatty at second base, I'm okay with that too. But bring in Kyle Schwarber as your DH. When it comes to center field, I know a lot of people are talking about Cody Bellinger. I like Cody Bellinger too. He's great defensively. You're not going to have to worry about that. But, out of the last 5 seasons, are you really going to look at the year he had with the Yankees and saying that's what you're going to get from Cody Bellinger offensively? Because prior to that, he wasn't a very good player. He's been not very good until last year. Do you trust giving him a good contract, a pretty decent contract, and letting him be your center fielder? I'm not going to be mad about that. Trust me, you could do a lot worse to Cody Bellinger. But I'm looking at it at the aspect, are the Mets going to give another big deal to a player? I don't know. But would I be mad about Cody Bellinger? Absolutely not. Can I see the Mets trading for a Duran from the Red Sox or Luis Robert, and that might pop up again? Sure. I would be okay with that. Those guys are starters. Luis Robert had a really good second half after the deadline when most people did not want him. We know the Mets were in on him, and for whatever reason, they decided not to go that route and go Cedric Mullins. We know how that turned out. Duran is a guy that, he's a couple of years ago had really good seasons. Last year wasn't so good, but he's still a dynamic type of player where I think he has a tremendous amount of potential. I'd love to get that guy. But it also depends on what the Mets are going to do. I think you can't make decisions on that. I don't think you can make a decision on first base or center field until you make a decision on what you're going to do with the ace. The ace determines everything. If you're going to trade for an ace, you're clearly going to have prospects, even guys at the major league level. Like I said, if they want Mauricio, if they want Acuna, if they want Sprout, once you make that trade, you see what's left. Then you can determine, all right, do I trust these prospects in center field, or a prospect in center field, or second base, or third base? Whatever holes you still have, you need to go out on the market and get the guys in here. Again, my personal offseason outlook, if this was me, I would rather have Tariq Skubal. He's the best pitcher out there. Now, it's going to take a lot. He could be a rental. Maybe the Mets can extend him. I don't know. But I'm not looking at 2027. I'm looking at 2026. Tariq Skubal, getting him in here will help us in 2026. I don't care about 2027. With the CBA coming up and there could be a work stoppage, 2027 is not guaranteed. Let me worry about 2026. You get Tariq Skubal in here, he will be beneficial for 2026. That's what I care about. I know David Stearns worries about 2032, but I can care less about that time. I don't even care about 2027 because I think the problem with 2025 was David Stearns worrying about 2026 too much. And the same thing at the trade deadline in 2024 when he should have brought in another starting pitcher and didn't. He was too concerned about 2026 and the prospects. That's my problem with David Stearns. Worry about the year that is currently happening. So this is what I would do. Trade for Tariq Skubal. I don't care about the 1-year rental. I don't care. Trade for Tariq Skubal. I would sign Okamoto. And I would sign Alex Bregman. That's what I would do. Center field, I would go with one of the kids. Whoever's left from whatever trade, if it's Benj or Williams, you put him in center field. You put Brett Brady at second base. So Alex Bregman, Okamoto, and Tariq Skubal. Now, obviously, bullpen is a little bit more of a broader spectrum because there's so many guys that are available. That's something that you really have to break down. And in the later hot stoves, we will break down these bullpen arms because it's such a crapshoot with these guys. I really can't, other than Diaz, I really don't have any, obviously I'm going to want certain guys, but that doesn't mean they're going to be good. I think, these guys are a crapshoot. They could have a great year this year and a bad year next year. Like, I don't know how I can really determine bullpen yet. But when it comes to position and pitching players, center field, I would go with one of the kids, either Benj or Williams, whoever's left from a trade package. I would trade for Tariq Skubal. I would sign Alex Bregman and sign Okamoto. Okamoto is not going to cost you as much as Murakami. I think you could probably get him on a 3-4-year deal with Okamoto. Alex Bregman is probably going to look for a 4-year deal. I'm not worried about his age. He's consistent. I know we got hurt this year, but he still hit 25 home runs, and he played, 120 games? If I'm not mistaken, let's look at Alex Bregman numbers here. Let me just check his numbers real quick. He's 31 years old. Okay, so he played in, let me just double check really quick. Hold on. All right, here we go. So he played in 114 games this year. He had 18 home runs. So 114 games. Let's say he plays another 30 games. He played 150 games. I'll even make him miss 12 games. In another 50 games, you think he would hit between, I'll say 5 or 6 more home runs. Nothing crazy. That's around the 24, 25 home run mark. He hit, for average, he batted .273. Great, love that. Only 70 strikeouts. So let's say another 50 games, he has another 15 to 20 strikeouts. So he has under 100 strikeouts. Great. He doesn't strike out a lot. He is a guy who can walk. He had 51 walks in 114 games. Let's say he'll have 60 walks in another 50 games. Let's just say that, 40 games. He had 62 RBIs in 114 games. Again, add another 40 games to that, 30 games to that. He'll have close to 80 RBIs. Let's say another 18 RBIs. Nothing fancy. So he's going to hit about 25 home runs, about 80 RBIs, and batting .273. We didn't get that production in the corner at all at third base. That is a guy who's a solid ball player, and he's great defensively. Perfect addition for the New York Mets. He has that run prevention that David Stearns loves to talk about, and he's a clutch ball player, number one. this is a guy I want to play in the playoffs. Just think, guys, you bring in Alex Bregman, you have Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor. What do those all three of those guys do great? Very well. They come up clutch in the postseason. Because the only guy that actually hit for Boston was Alex Bregman in the postseason. It was very short. He was the one that killed the Yankees in the wild card series. And yes, explosive. Bregman's a leader. So all this nonsense about Vientos, Mauricio, Acuna, fuck that. Alex Bregman's the guy. He's a clutch player. We know what he can do in the postseason. He's 31 years old. He's not 35. You can give him a 4-year deal. And yeah, it's going to cost you between $25 and $28 million. But you know what? I know what he is. He's a 24, 25 home run guy, 80 to 85 RBIs, 270 average. The Mets don't have that at third base. It was a fluke year for Vientos, who's a bad third baseman. Give me Alex Bregman. If you want to go cheap in center field and go with one of the kids, whoever you have left from a trade to bring in a starter, if that's Benj, great. If that's Williams, great. Now you got that money to spend for your corner at first base and third base. Get legitimate players in here. And again, if you want to bring in Alex Bregman, you want to try to bring back Alonso, I'm not excited about that, but I would be okay. I always think Alonso would be a better Met than going anywhere else. But if you're looking at what David Stearns has been talking about when it comes to run prevention, again, Alex Bregman, Okamoto. If those guys combine for 50 home runs, 160 RBIs, let's say Bregman hits 80 RBIs, drives in 80 RBIs, and Okamoto brings in 70 RBIs. That's 150 RBIs right there. That already replaces the RBIs from Pete Alonso. Now you stretch out your lineup. If both of them hit 25 home runs, or let's say 20 home runs, let's not go crazy. 20 home runs apiece, that's 40 home runs. You replace the home run production. Both of these guys hit for average, 260, 270, right where Pete Alonso was this year. So you replace one guy with two guys that you stretch out the lineup with Lindor, with Soto, with Nimmo. That's already your top 5, 6 guys in your lineup. Now, what do you got to worry about? Your 7th, 8th, 9th guys? Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez. Now, who is your 9th guy? Is that going to be one of your young kids in Jet Williams or Carson Benj? They got speed, so you can bat them 9th. They can be your secondary leadoff hitter. You see where I'm going here? It stretches out your lineup. Pete Alonso puts a stranglehold on this lineup, in my opinion. Because I think if you sign Pete Alonso, you're going to bring back a kid at third base. You're going to go with Brett Beatty at second base, and you're going to go with a kid at center field. I truly think that you can get Bregman and Okamoto for the amount of years, let's say combined 8 years for Okamoto and Bregman, let's say 4 years apiece, for one guy in a 6-7 year deal for Pete Alonso. Tell me what's going to help this team more, Bregman, Okamoto, or just Alonso? Because I'm telling you this right now, guys. The Mets might still go get an ace. Let's say they do get Tariq Skubal and bring back Pete Alonso. What did they change in this lineup? Because if you bring back Pete Alonso, the third baseman's either going to be Mauricio or Vientos, in my opinion. And your center field is going to be either a lesser center fielder that they might bring in, like another guy like Jose Siri, or they go with the kids in Carson Benj and Jet Williams. That doesn't excite me. Bringing back Pete Alonso to have the same lineup, and the only difference is center field in Jet Williams or Carson Benj, does not excite me. That does not make me feel good about this lineup. Could it be good? Sure. You got Alonso, you got Lindor, you got Soto. They can do damage, and even Brandon Nimmo for that matter. That is solid top 4, but you still leave a lot to be desired for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That means you're expecting Vientos to bounce back. You're expecting big things from Carson Benj and Jet Williams. You're expecting a similar year from Brett Beatty. You're expecting a better year from Francisco Alvarez. That's a lot of if. Too many ifs. I want less ifs going into 2026. Bregman is a less of an if. Okamoto is an if, 100%. 100%. But I feel more confident in a position player coming from Japan than a pitcher. I'm not saying that Okamoto is going to hit 35 home runs. I'm not even giving you that outlook. I'm not even telling you that he's going to be a 280 average. But I think he can bat 260. I think he can hit 20 home runs, which is nothing special. But when you pair him with another guy who's a solid ball player, like a Bregman, who is a solid offensive player, you replace Pete Alonso's singular stats with multiple guys in your lineup. With Lindor, with Soto, with Nimmo. So you already got 5 guys right off the bat. Let's just go with a crazy lineup here. If you bring in Bregman and Okamoto, you got Lindor leading off, Soto second. I don't like Nimmo fourth. I think Nimmo should be back, but let's do this. Bregman batting third. Pete Alonso cleaning up. Brandon Nimmo fifth. Okamoto sixth. Guess what, guys? Your 7th, 8th, and 9th is very interesting, right? Now you got Brett Beatty and Francisco Alvarez. However you want to situate them, you want to, mix up the lefties a little bit. Cool. Let's put Francisco Alvarez 7th. Brett Beatty 8th. Your center fielder, whoever that might be, which it's Jet Williams and Carson Bench. Both guys are good speed guys and have really good bats. And Carson Bench looks like the better hitter at this point as your 9. So your 1 through 6 is already set with legitimate guys. Not guys that you're hoping for good years. Guys that you know are proven. Now, Okamoto, again, still a question mark. But when you got him in your, as your number 6th hitter, it's not the worst thing in the world to have a guy who's an if, who can be potentially really good. And even if he's not great, and let's say he's a 260 hitter, 20 home runs, 75 RBIs. Nothing special, but solid. Find me a 6th hitter in a lineup that has 75 RBIs, 20 home runs, 260 average. That already helps. Now you're 7, 8, and 9. You can really mix around in Alvarez, Beatty, and one of the young kids in Jet Williams and Carson Bench. That is a solid lineup. Now, you already got your ace in whoever that might be. I'm putting Tariq Skubal there. With Nolan McLean, you're 1-2. Same thing with the lineup that I'm talking about. You could do with your rotation. If you bring in Skubal and you have McLean, your 3, 4, and 5 you can really work with here, especially with Holmes and Peterson as your staple in this rotation. You want to put Peterson in number 3, Holmes in number 4, number 5, again, depending on who you trade. If Sproat's still around, great. If Sproat's in a trade package to get Tariq Skubal, whatever. Go get a guy like a Jose Quintana type. I'm not saying Jose Quintana, but get a guy like that who can give you innings as your 5th starter. Your 5th starter is not going to be a great pitcher, not going to be a good pitcher. He'll give you a solid start every now and then, but he'll give you innings. When you need to rest your bullpen, you can get a guy to give you 6 innings. He might give up 4 runs, but he'll give you length. That's what you got to do here. So once again, my acquisition outlook for this offseason, trade for Tariq Skubal, sign Okamoto for first base, and sign Alex Bregman. Those are your 3 acquisitions. One's a trade. There's 2 signings. I think you can get Bregman for a 4-year deal. I would even stretch it to a 5-year deal. Get him in here. Okamoto is not going to cost you a ton of money. He's going to be less years and less money than Pete Alonso. But we're not looking at the production. Too many people look at, how do you replace Pete Alonso's numbers only? You can't look at it just replacing him with Okamoto. That is not a comparison. What you're looking at is how you can put that production from Pete Alonso and put it into 2 players. It stretches out your lineup. But Jody, it is that easy. It's not that hard. We know that David Stearns is who really likes Okamoto. That has been determined. He likes him more over Murakami. We know Stearns went to see Murakami. We had no idea he was on Okamoto for the Yomiuri Giants. We didn't even know he was going to get posted. We know Stearns now from reports, he really likes Okamoto because of his defensive prowess at first base. He is a gold glover. And defense usually kind of sticks in Japan when these guys come over. Their defense, it's still baseball. Same diamond. So defensively, I think he's going to be fine. So Alex Bregman is obviously the question mark when it comes to David Stearns. But it really depends on what you get rid of. Again, I just don't see, because I truly believe this. Even if you sign Okamoto only for first base and you don't want to bring back Pete Alonso, and you're going to go with one of the young kids at third base and one of the young kids in center field, that is if in center field and if at third base. And even with a somewhat question mark in Okamoto, you're not replacing the production from Pete Alonso with multiple players because you got 3 spots that are ifs. At least if you bring Okamoto and Alex Bregman, you have a better chance of replicating the production from one player in Pete Alonso than doing that. Because I truly believe this. If you bring back Pete Alonso, you're going to see a young guy at third base, one of the young kids at third base, and one of the young kids in center field. I think that's a dangerous game to play because you know what that is? The same goddamn lineup. The same lineup that people bitched about for 2 months and for most of the year. If that's the lineup you want to complain about last year and want to bring back Pete Alonso, you're wishing for the same type of lineup. Why do you want the same type of lineup? It just doesn't make sense. Like, you're actually saving money by bringing in. You're not really saving more money overall, but you're giving a somewhat short deal for 2 players than one long-term deal for Pete Alonso. I don't think the Mets are going to go 6 to 7 years. I think their max might be 5. Now, ultimately, that might get Pete Alonso here. Now, in my opinion, if you're going to bring back Pete Alonso and you want to go with the young kids at third base and center field, bring in Kyle Schwarber as your DH. Doesn't that completely change your lineup? Let's say Kyle Schwarber is not going to go crazy and hit 50 home runs. Let's say he gives you 35 home runs. Pete Alonso gives you 35 home runs, 38 home runs. Let's go crazy. I don't think Juan Soto is going to be another 40 home run guy, but let's say he hits 30. Lindor, 25 to 30. Nimmo, 25. Great. Schwarber is not a big average guy, but he can bat 250. Pete Alonso, I think if he continues to do what he did this year, average-wise, it's great. Nimmo, I don't trust him, but whatever. Lindor can be a 260 guy. Juan Soto, I think, is going to have a better year, average-wise. Second year as a Met, I think he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, but Henry, I don't care if Schwarber's only a DH. The Mets have not had a DH. Since the DH has been implemented in the National League, the Mets have had a hard time actually having a DH. At least Schwarber's a legitimate DH. You don't have to worry about him getting older when it comes to the field. All he does is hit. Now, I think he's going to, slowly get worse. But if he can hit 35 home runs for the next 2 years, let's say you give him a 4-year deal. If he can be a 35, 40 home run guy for the next 2 years, along with Lindor, Soto, Alonso, I'm okay with that. If he's starting to dwindle age-wise and getting older and not as productive offensively, but he's still hitting 25 to 30 home runs, the Mets don't have that as a DH. They're bringing in they have DHs that are 12 to 15 home run guys. They bring in Vogelback and Ruff. They bring in Jesse Winker, who's a 15 home run guy, nothing special. You know, we were having guys from the minors come up in DH that weren't very good. That's it. Like, give me a legitimate DH. And again, I'm not saying go get Schwarber. Like, if you're gonna say, listen, I don't want Vientos at third base, but you know what? I think his bat is still potentially good, and I want to put him as the DH. I'm fine with that. But go get Alex Bregman. Don't give me Vientos as the DH. You know, Mauricio, your third baseman, bend your center fielder, and bring back Pete Alonso and tell me you get excited, Net fans. Not happening to me. You want to hear me get mad again? The same way I talked about this rotation in the beginning of the season, the same way I'll talk about this lineup. Bringing back Pete Alonso and putting Carson Benj and let's say Mauricio at third base is not changing the lineup. Unless Mauricio and Benj completely become really good players offensively, which is a big if, because we don't know. It's the same goddamn lineup that people complained about all last year. So if you're going to complain about that lineup all last year, it's similar. Because you don't know what you're going to get from Mauricio. You don't know what you're going to get from Carson Benj or Jet Williams, whoever might be a center fielder. You can't bring back the same goddamn lineup and telling me kids are going to make the difference. We've seen this story too many times. I don't want that no more. Gigi, I don't care about the new hitting coach. If you think the new hitting coach is going to do you wonders, then why didn't this happen sooner? But hey, don't worry. Jeff Albert, who's been a part of this organization in the minor leagues as hitting coaches, is now the director of hitting, along with Troy Snitker as the hitting coach. So Jeff Albert, who is going to be overlooking whatever Troy Snitker is doing, is a guy who's been in the farm system as hitting coach in the minors, who moved his way up, is a guy who is now promoted to hitting director of the major league team. What prospect has hit who's come up in the major leagues? Vientos, flamed out. Brett Beatty has finally looked like something, but still, question mark. Mauricio, Acuna, Alvarez. All these guys proved nothing, who couldn't hit breaking balls, can't hit for average. Yes, they show potential, but it flames out rather quickly. So this is the guy who's the hitting director now. Constantly the prospects come up and can't hit. Most of them can't hit breaking balls. Most of them strike out too much. Most of them don't hit for average. This is the guy you promoted to hitting director of the Major League Club. You brought out an outside influence as the hitting coach in Troy Snitker. Okay, whatever. Gigi, I hope you're right. I'm on board. I hope you're right. But let's not act like it will when these guys are not proven. Constantly, our position player prospects fail offensively. They don't hit for average. They strike out too much. They can't hit breaking balls. That's a huge problem. These guys, if they have value on the market, trade them. This is why the ace, if it's going to be a trade, and I truly believe that Valdez and Cease aren't going to be signed by David Stearns. So it's got to go the trade market route. Pinpoint the guys you're going to make a trade for. Whatever the package is. I'm going Tariq Skubal, the high end. That's going to cost you. Who cares? It's not McLean. Doesn't matter. You have more than enough guys that play the same positions that you can trade some of them. This is why the indecisiveness of David Stearns pisses me off. You got to make a decision. If Vientos you want on this team, then trade Acuna and Mauricio. If you're going to try to get an ace, Sproat is expendable, especially if you're going to try to keep Tong and make him work. Or even you want to keep Sproat and Tong is a guy that team wants. Get rid of him. The point is getting better for 2026. You can't be worrying about 2027, 2028, and whatever. Do it. It's simple. The best thing the Mets can do is get this ace as early in the offseason as possible because it determines what your farm system looks like and what you have left in your farm system to work with the Major League roster. If you believe you want a third baseman that is great defensively and give you good offensive numbers, you sign Alex Bregman. If that leaves you with one of the kids in center field, whoever you might have left, just Jet Williams or Carson Bench, you can play them in center field. First base, go get Okamoto. You know he's going to be good defensively. Yeah, it's a question mark offensively, but even if he has less numbers in Japan and comes to the major leagues, let's say he bats 250, 20 home runs instead of his 25 to 30 home runs in Japan, but he hits 75 RBIs. It's better because you're combining Bregman's numbers and Okamoto's numbers combined is the production you get from Pete Alonso for one player in the lineup. Now you spread that out for two players. That's the idea. Spreading out this lineup with better players because now you only got to worry about 7, 8, and 9. And if that's Brett Beatty, Alvarez 7 and 8, and your ninth hitter is one of the young kids in center field in Jet Williams or Carson Bench, great. You extended your lineup from 1 through 4 through 1 through 6 with prominent, proven guys. Holy shit, what a concept. It doesn't seem that hard, but David Stearns is going to make it hard. You know why? Because this guy overthinks every goddamn thing. So, guys, World Series still going on. We're heading to Game 6, heading back to Toronto, where Toronto can win the World Series. First time since, 93? I think most of us are rooting for the Blue Jays because, one, it pisses off Yankee fans, which is always fun, and we're sick of the Dodgers. We hate the Dodgers. I don't want to see them win. I want them to fail. So, not like I'm, cheering my life off for the Blue Jays to win because I really don't care. But it would be nice for the Blue Jays to win when Yankee fans can call the Blue Jays frauds all year. Yet they beat the Yankees in easy fashion. They're in the World Series and on the verge of winning the World Series. It's the first time since 93. So once the World Series is over and offseason really does kick off and we start getting more and more news, like I said, I think there's way too much smoke report-wise about Tariq Skubal getting traded. I think it's going to happen. And the Mets need to be on that like peanut butter on bread. They better be. Look, why be a team that has World Series aspirations? You got one of the richest owners in baseball and a quote-unquote the smartest mind in David Stearns, and you're not going to try to get the best player on the market as a pitcher. It's stupid, right? Now, would I be okay with Freddie Peralta? Sure, but I feel like they're going to go the lower route, the lesser route, because it's cheaper, prospect-wise. Get me the best guy. Because if Peralta is going to cost you, let's say, 3 top 10 prospects, why not just give one more top 10 prospect to get Skubal, right? Skubal's better. Peralta's pretty damn good, but Skubal's better. Stop getting the lesser guy when you can get the best guy. That's what always annoys me about David Stearns. That's what he needs to do. And I'm ready for David Stearns to surprise me. If David Stearns pulls off a trade, now, in my opinion, ranking the trade market guys for starting pitching before we end this whole thing. I think Peralta has an extra year, but let me check, Truman. Let me just double check for you. Let me double check. Freddie Peralta. He has a club option. He's a free agent after the 26th season. So he's a rental. Well, GG, here's the thing. And this is the problem. This is where people get a little upset. I don't care if he's a rental. This is the problem. Now, if Tariq Skubal and Freddie Peralta are both rentals, go get the better player, which is Skubal. Give the extra prospect for the better player. The only reason why is because the Brewers are not idiots. Did you see what they got for Devin Williams? Durbin was a big part of their success this year. I think you can probably get away with 2 top 10 prospects, but it depends on where the Mets are. What if Skubal does get traded elsewhere? What if the Mets are kind of holding the bag and Peralta's the only one left? You don't think the Brewers are going to say, well, you're kind of out of luck. You only got Peralta left on the market. We're going to make you overpay. That's where the Mets can't be. Truman, I don't think Peralta's going to cost us 3 top 10 prospects. I think 2 at the most. Maybe a third guy that's maybe lower in the farm system. That might be a top 25 prospect or something like that on the lower end. But you also have to understand, if Peralta's, because here's the thing. I think guys like Peralta, guys like Sandy Alcantara are guys on lower market teams, small market teams that are going to look at like the Joe Ryan possibility trade market and the Skubal trade market. And they're going to go based on what Skubal and Joe Ryan possibly got traded for. And they're going to use that as a marker. If Joe Ryan and Skubal take 4 top 10 prospects, why wouldn't the Marlins and Peralta ask for 3 top prospects? They are the next available top pitchers. That's where you have to look. Yeah, GG, I think it's going to take more than that. I think at the very least, it's got to be a very high top 1. Right? I think it's going to take a top 5 prospect at least, and maybe a top 15. Maybe you can get a high top, like they're getting rid of a pitcher, right? So they might want Jonah Tong. He might be the top guy. So say, okay, they want Jonah Tong, and maybe they want another pitcher. Let's say a Ewan or a Santucci. Okay, done. I'm good. I do that for Freddie Peralta. So that's what you have to look at. I don't think Sandy Alcantara or Freddie Peralta is going to be traded before Tariq Skubal, because they're going to use Tariq Skubal trade as a marker, as saying, well, Sandy Alcantara and Freddie Peralta are the next top guys now. It took Skubal 4 prospects to get him top 10, let's say top 15. So we're going to ask for 3. I don't think they're going to get 3, but what teams are desperate? Now that Skubal's off the board, let's say Joe Ryan isn't going to get traded. So now you're down to 2 guys that you can trade for. Of course, the Marlins are not going to get, Sandy Alcantara got a couple of years left of control. The Marlins aren't going to look to trade him knowing they're not going to sign him. He's under control for the next couple of years. Now, when it comes to Freddie Peralta, he's a free agent. So the Brewers are more likely going to trade him. But they're not going to give him away. You might have to overpay a little to get Freddie Peralta in here. Why, in turn, I'd rather overpay for a guy like Skubal, even though he's a rental, but he's your best option. That's why I would do it. Now, I think the better idea is to go get Sandy Alcantara. You don't have to extend him. He got a couple more years of control. He's still a very good pitcher. He's better than everybody else you have. and pairing him with McClain would be good. A full year after Tommy John is usually when these guys put up similar numbers that you used to see it. Sandy Alcantara beat the Mets twice this year in the second half. He had a really good second half. And guess what he was doing, guys? He was going 6 innings every single time he went out there and throwing gems. So, yeah, if I bring Sandy Alcantara in here, I'm going to be excited because I like this guy. I was on him since the trade deadline when everybody's like, he has a 5 ERA. Yeah, he just came back from Tommy John. Look at his numbers in the second half. Look at his numbers. They were damn good. And he was going 6 innings plus almost every time out. That's what we need. So, with that said, guys, a 2-hour Mets Hot Stove, episode 2, right here on the channel. Next Hot Stove, me and Chris will probably be together. Me and Chris were supposed to do a show together, but again, things happen. Life happens. He got caught up in something and couldn't join us. But again, make sure you subscribe to his channel as well, True Mets Talk with CP. Subscribe to my channel. Follow NYM Hot Stove on X, guys. I post the stream on X. I post breaking news, all that fun stuff on New York Mets Hot Stove. The official hot stove of this show is on X. So all the shows are going to be posted on there. Any news with the Mets is going to be posted on there as well. Follow me at TMWRNYM. That is the official YouTube X account of my channel. And, of course, follow Chris on X as well at True Mets Talk CP as well. Thank you guys for watching episode 2 of the Mets Hot Stove, a long 2-hour show, but it was well worth it because it gets us started of a big offseason for the New York Mets. The next time this Hot Stove episode 3 will happen will probably be after the World Series is over, which kicks off the official start of the offseason for Major League Baseball. Have a great night, guys. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you next time on the Mets Hot Stove show. Have a great night, guys. Good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life.